What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are excited because we are less than 2 months away from the Dallas Cowboys beginning their 2021 season, a campaign that will surely end with them lifting their 6th Lombardi trophy. But way before that, the Dallas Cowboys will begin training camp out in Oxnard, California. We are getting so close to it. We have been celebrating the countdown to training camp with a training camp preview series here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. Make sure you do subscribe. We recently did pass 10,000 subscribers. We have a contest going on right now. Make sure to go back in our feed to see the video on how you can enter to win a Blogging the Boys cap. But today we are continuing with our series, and we are talking about the middle of the Cowboys defense, a position that has been one that many people have been excited to hear about, and that is the Dallas Cowboys linebackers. Now, this is a group that is under a bit of a microscope, if I'm being honest, in 2021 for a very particular reason, because I think sometimes when you say that phrase, that a position or a player or even a whole team is under a microscope, it's because people are expecting a lot from them. And I don't know that that's quite the case with the Cowboys. The Cowboys this year at linebacker are kind of in the middle of a Venn diagram, kind of like two ships passing in the night. And in order to kind of figure out where things stand with the linebacker position, we have to kind of figure out where they ended last season. 2020 was a very down year for the Cowboys at linebacker, as we all know. Very, very, very awful season in general for the Cowboys defense, for the Cowboys as a whole, for the Cowboys offense when Dak Prescott went down most of the time, although they did have some nice moments. Very awful season for the Cowboys coaching staff on defense. Obviously, Mike Nolan dismissed after just 1 year as the team's defensive coordinator, but Dan Quinn is here now, and he's going to fix all of this. But looking at the specifics of last season, of 2020, obviously we all were hoping after the mess that was 2019 with Mike McCarthy coming in, with Mike Nolan, with that kind of blended hybrid 3-4-4-3 front, that we would see more of what we saw from the Cowboys in 2018. The last time this team won a division title obviously was 3 years ago, and they had a lot of success on offense after trading for Amari Cooper. But while that was certainly a big storyline for that team, one of the other things was the sort of revitalized play at the linebacker position, even after Matt Eberflus had left to be the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts, who was such an instrumental part in Sean Lee's development. But the Cowboys got a strong, really an amazing level of play out of Leighton Vander Esch, who was then a rookie and who incidentally got beat out for Defensive Rookie of the Year by Matt Eberflus's rookie linebacker then in Darius Leonard. And so while 2018 was a big year for Leighton Vander Esch, it was also a big year for Jalen Smith. I mean, in 2018, you had, even though the Cowboys lost, the great play that Jalen made on Deshaun Watson, the great way the Cowboys linebackers played against New Orleans. There were all these moments, and there was a lot of really great energy around them. And I think a lot of us thought, man, the Cowboys really pulled something special off, because there were a lot of people who wanted to see the Cowboys draft, say, Derwin James in 2018. And while the team drafted Leighton Vander Esch, some people kind of came around and said, man, you really identified a generational prospect at the linebacker position in Leighton Vander Esch. And what's more is, I mean, this was 2018. We were only 2 years removed from the Cowboys spending the 34th overall pick on Jalen Smith, and they looked to be right. Jalen played incredibly well in 2018 and really justified the Cowboys risking a draft pick that was that high, a high second-round draft pick on him. Jalen struggled in 2017. I think we all obviously understood that he was not only acclimating to the NFL game, but, playing football for the first time since his injury at Notre Dame. So 2018 was kind of all these things connecting and materializing and really taking off in a way that really supported the Cowboys and the decision-making that they made at the linebacker position. But all of that really fell apart last year, as we've talked about for so long this entire offseason here on the channel and all over bloggingtheboys.com. A lot of the reason for that, obviously, was, the fact that the team and the linebacker specifically regressed in terms of talent, in terms of production, but a lot of it was that Leighton Vander Esch was unavailable. I mean, consider that Leighton Vander Esch these past 2 seasons has been such a point of injury concern that Sean Lee, of all people, has been more reliable than him in that department. And it sounds like a joke. It sounds like we're being, silly or sarcastic, but it's the reality. And while Sean Lee did retire this offseason, and that is technically a negative, we've talked about this before. I don't know that I view Sean Lee as a progress stopper, because Sean Lee did come in and spell Leighton Vander Esch at times. We've still seen some elite football from Sean Lee over the last couple of years. 2 years ago, the Monday Night Football game in New York, the Black Cat game, Sean Lee was incredible. Later on in the 2019 season against the Los Angeles Rams down the stretch when the Cowboys kept their NFC East title hopes alive, Sean Lee was incredible in lieu of Leighton Vander Esch. And so while Sean Lee didn't necessarily have that form last year, and while we will all certainly miss him, while it is a negative for Sean Lee to ultimately retire, I do think that it is a bit of a positive in the sense that it opens the door for other players on the team. Now, speaking of other players on the team, let's talk about what the Cowboys have done this season to improve the state of things at the linebacker position. We want to get rid of all these red lines, and we want to see nothing but green lines. You look at it, and the Cowboys obviously spent not the 10th overall pick, but the 12th overall pick because of their trade back with the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round to take Penn State's Micah Parsons. Boom, the linebacker position is suddenly a whole lot better than it was when last season ended. Remember, by the way, when the season ended and Jalen Smith was asked if he envisioned himself on the team in 2021, he said, "Who, me?" He said, "Watch the film." And the Cowboys clearly watched the film because they spent a first-round pick on a linebacker and they spent a fourth-round pick on a linebacker in LSU's Jabril Cox. Now you look at it, and that's what we kind of talked about, the middle of the Venn diagram, two ships passing in the night. The future is kind of arriving, and the future is sort of getting here for the Cowboys at the linebacker spot in Micah Parsons, in Jabril Cox, maybe in Francis Bernard, maybe Luke Gifford, if you really believe in those players down near the bottom of the roster. We'll get to that in a second. And you've got this wave that's kind of on its way out. We know that the Cowboys seemingly do not believe in Leighton Vander Esch long-term. How do we know that? Just after the NFL draft, while Stephen Jones can say all he wants and say that Leighton Vander Esch is in the Cowboys' plans for the future, the reality, what the moves dictate, what the moves suggest, not even suggest, what the moves scream, is that that is not necessarily the case, because the Cowboys, again, right after the draft, declined Leighton Vander Esch's fifth-year option, meaning that this season, 2021, is a contract year for the former first-round pick. So now you've got Leighton Vander Esch who's entering a contract year. And while maybe you think that's a negative, maybe you're a big Leighton fan, maybe you're worried about what the future could hold at the linebacker position, maybe you feel like it's a bit of a precarious bet to kind of roll the dice and trust such young players like Parsons and Cox. Well, ultimately, we've seen a lot of players in the NFL, not just within the Cowboys, play really well in contract years. If you're trying to spin this positively, that's where this ultimately falls, is that Leighton Vander Esch is out to prove something, obviously because the Cowboys have just drafted his replacement. And he was just drafted 3 years ago. I mean, that's, you know, time moves fast in the NFL, and Leighton Vander Esch is staring his replacement in the face in Micah Parsons. And while it's noble of Leighton Vander Esch to say he's going to take him under his wing, he's going to teach him, he's going to show him all these things, etc., the reality is that Jalen Smith is tied contractually to the Cowboys beyond 2021. I know a lot of people are upset about that, but that's the thing. I mean, I could see a future in 2022 where the Cowboys keep Jalen around. I mean, that might be the case. Maybe they move on. Obviously, that would make Jalen's decision to change to number 9 look a little bit, you know, certainly more different in hindsight than it already did. But, you know, the point is things are happening fast for the Cowboys at the linebacker position, and Leighton Vander Esch certainly knows that better than anybody else. Now, speaking of Leighton, speaking of Jalen, let's take a look at all of the linebackers that are currently on the Dallas Cowboys roster as we enter training camp. A reminder for you, I say this every time so nobody gets upset. These are listed alphabetically. This isn't exactly, you know, some sort of, you know, depth chart or whatever. But we've got Francis Bernard, friend of the show. We did sit down with Francis Bernard a couple of months ago. If you do want to go back in our feed, in our channel, to go watch that interview. Delightful young player. Talked about wanting to really improve on special teams this season. That is going to be fun to watch. Jabril Cox, as mentioned, Luke Gifford as well. Anthony Hines III, Azur Kamara. We've got Keanu Neal, who we'll talk about in just a moment. We've got, obviously, Micah Parsons, Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch. And a lot of times when you talk about the linebacker group, when it comes to the Cowboys, obviously these names at the top are really widely known. And so there's a lot of suggestions. There's a lot of opinions when it comes to these players. Let Micah Parsons play. Get rid of Jalen Smith. Let Jabril Cox play. He's such a great defender. He's great, obviously, in coverage. He's really versatile. He's great moving laterally, on and on and on. All those things are fair in their own right. Get rid of Leighton Vander Esch. It's a contract year for him. Just trade him now. That way you can get something for him. Because I think when people look at situations like Leighton Vander Esch currently, they start to kind of see a price tag on players, right? They say, or they see, excuse me, man, he could leave in free agency and then we'll be left with nothing. Or we could trade him now and we could get something for him, and something is better than nothing. Look at me. I'm a great businessman. And while that is true that something is better than nothing, the reality, though, is that this is a position where we've seen injuries impact it very recently, right? Like that was the whole situation with Leighton Vander Esch last year. Got hurt in week 1, like we talked about. Couldn't stay healthy. Hasn't stayed healthy for the last 2 years. This is professional football in the NFL, with players having contact with one another in an NFL where they've just added another game. So now you have to play 17 games of the regular season before you can even get to the playoffs. So when you consider all those factors, while I totally get the idea, or I support it to some degree, trading Leighton Vander Esch for, you know, whatever draft capital is now. Maybe you want to call it a 3rd round pick, because that's the other thing. nobody's giving up more than a third-round pick because they're going to be worried that he might leave in free agency. Maybe Leighton Vander Esch will net the Cowboys a compensatory pick in 2023. That's looking way down the road, but ultimately, I don't want to trade Leighton Vander Esch, and you shouldn't either, because Leighton Vander Esch represents something that is very valuable in the NFL, and that is depth. Depth is one of the most important things, one of the most fundamental things that you can have in the NFL. And while it's a little shaky or a little unproven for the Cowboys, probably a better way to put it, the Cowboys have it. I mean, think about this. Francis Bernard, we talked about this, kind of, your special team stud. Hopefully Bones Fossil finds a way to really kind of let him loose there this season. But you've got Jabril Cox, you've got Micah Parsons, you've got Jalen Smith, and you have Leighton Vander Esch. You have a number of options, a number of different ways you can rotate these players. I didn't even mention Keanu Neal. Again, we're going to get to him in a minute, I promise. I mean, you have suddenly 5 linebackers that to varying degrees you can trust and count on throughout the course of a regular season. And that is something that a lot of teams would really, really, really do a lot to ultimately have. And while it does kind of feel like it's a little heavy, like there's going to be some decisions that have to be made, you want to be a little bit more organized and whatever, ultimately the Cowboys should sit pretty because they know better than anybody, certainly when it comes to last season, just how much an injury can impact them on the field when it comes to really anywhere, as evidenced by the entire offense just about falling apart last year, but specifically at the linebacker position. So should they trade Leighton Vander Esch? No, we've talked about this before, because again, it's a little bit shaky, a little bit unproven, but this is depth that is really nice to have over the course of a marathon-long season, and that is something that you never, ever, ever want to give up. Now, I have a question for you, so get ready to answer. I don't know. I don't have like a flashy hand, so I don't know why I did that. But my question for you, who is going to be the biggest surprise player for the Cowboys at the linebacker position? That's right, baby. I mentioned Keanu Neal. I don't think that Micah Parsons is going to be a surprise because we have to define that word. Surprise is like, whoa, didn't see that coming. I'm surprised. I think we all expect Micah Parsons to be really good. Jabril Cox, even, I think where he was drafted, I think kind of lends itself as a 4th-round pick to being a surprise. That's kind of the definition, a later round draft pick, obviously day 3 pick, but still, I think we all expect him to play rather well. We all expect him to kind of, we'll get to Jabril Cox in a second, I promise. I don't think that any of us, and I promise I'm not trying to bang on anybody, but I don't think any of us are expecting much from Leighton Vander Esch. I think we're expecting kind of the same. And I don't know that we're expecting much from Jalen Smith. And so before I get to Keanu, I do actually think that Jalen Smith could be the biggest surprise. Like if we're defining a surprise as something we did not see coming, I think you could totally define Jalen Smith as being the answer to that when the season is ultimately done. Because while Jalen Smith was so bad last season for the Cowboys, it's very possible that he's not that bad again. And again, I promise I'm not trying to be critical here. It's very possible that last season was a really, really off year for Jalen Smith and he improves. Even if he improves marginally, that is still an improvement. That is still a surprise. And so Jalen Smith, I think if you check Twitter, if you check comment sections, if you check forums, Jalen Smith is probably the least popular player among Cowboys fans that's on the team. And so for him to play, again, just kind of average or, well enough to be around average, I do think that would be viewed as a pleasant surprise for a lot of people. But ultimately here, in the classic way of asking who could be the biggest surprise, it's Keanu Neal because of his versatility, because of the fact that he's played safety. We talk so much about, and we're going to talk more about in a second, Jabril Cox and his coverage skills. Keanu Neal, I think we all believe, brings a really powerful presence in the middle of the field where the linebackers obviously hover around, but he also brings a coverage element that has been sorely missing for this Cowboys defense. We know he's going to get more opportunities off the top than Jabril Cox, which means he's going to have all the more opportunities, obviously, to show himself off, to make an impact, to obviously affect the game on defense, which is what we want to see. Keanu Neal is somebody who I think was a little bit underrated as a free agent. And I'm not trying to just gloss up what the Cowboys did in free agency. I think we all wish they would have done more. I think we all want to see the Cowboys spend more and go after bigger name free agents. And the reality is that Cowboys like to kind of, find a bargain. And Keanu Neal, obviously coming off not his best season, has an opportunity to reunite with Dan Quinn in a defense that he knows that he's had success in. And so ultimately, I think if you have to bet on one of these players to be a surprise in the sense of over-delivering, I really think that it's Keanu Neal because he is a very unique option. He's obviously a former safety. Obviously now, look, he's not jumping from one side of the ball to the other. This isn't Juan Castillo here for the Cowboys, but this is I think a transformation that could really, really serve as an evolution for the Cowboys in terms of what they've been doing. This does seem to be like not a regression, but a return for the Cowboys defensively, certainly at the linebacker spot, to things and basics and schemes that they were more comfortable in 2018. Now, obviously, Keanu Neal was not a part of the team at that time, but Keanu Neal is somebody who has thrived and flourished in what Dan Quinn offers as a defensive coordinator, which is very optimistic for the group as a whole. If I have to name kind of the three players I think that are going to be, if we look back at season's end and we say who had the best season for the Cowboys at the linebacker position, I don't know how Keanu Neal isn't in that top three. And that's a really exciting thing. So maybe it's not a surprise. Maybe you're already expecting big things. But I think that if you are expecting big things, I still think that Keanu Neal can technically surprise, because I think he has the potential to play at an elite level, maybe not for the duration of an entire season, but to the point that he more than justifies the Cowboys believing in him and obviously going after him when they did in free agency. Now, I mentioned that we would bring up Jabril Cox. Now is that time. Jabril Cox, I believe, I think you believe, we've talked about this a lot here on the channel, the best coverage linebacker on the team. And so when we're talking about when will Jabril Cox earn a role, when will he play his way onto the field, I do believe that there's going to come a point of no return for Dan Quinn and this Cowboys defense, because what Jabril Cox does, and granted, we're simply talking about right now in a very, very particular vacuum, his abilities in coverage is something we talked about Keanu Neal, but generally speaking is not offered by any Cowboys linebacker, certainly any Cowboys linebacker that was on the team last year. And so I think that when you talk about today's NFL and all the passing and the ways the Cowboys are going to be playing in nickel so often, I think you're going to have somebody like Jabril Cox out there to play in coverage, to play in space, to run side to side. And those are things that are not strengths for Jalen Smith. That are not strengths for Leighton Vander Esch. And so I do believe that we'll see the Cowboys. This happens, unfortunately, because in the NFL, you can follow the money oftentimes. Players who have big contracts are given deference, or given prioritization, are given more opportunities. And we talked about Jabril Cox is a fourth-round pick. And so the opportunities will not be there right off the bat for him like they will other players with veteran experience like Jalen and Leighton and so on and so forth. But there will come a point where it is undeniable that Jabril Cox is the more preferred option in terms of having success for this Cowboys defense. And I think the Cowboys are going to have to look themselves in the mirror, and they're going to have to bench Jalen Smith. They're going to have to bench Leighton Vander Esch, and that's something that they've kind of flirted with before. And obviously they're under a new regime overall in Mike McCarthy, and now specifically in Dan Quinn. But that is an uncomfortable moment that we have not seen the Cowboys excel in when it comes to other positions. Look at Jason Witten at tight end. The Cowboys do not like to make the hard decision, and to more specifically look that hard decision in the eye and tell the hard decision that they are making it. I do believe that this coaching staff is more capable, more willing to do stuff like that. And ultimately, I mean, Tony Romo said it best. Football is a meritocracy. You should play the best dudes. And Jabril Cox is going to prove very, very, very soon. I would assume sort of maybe if we have to put a point on it by mid-season, that is soon for a rookie linebacker, that he is one of the best options for this team, and he's going to make it difficult. He's going to make it difficult, rather, for the Cowboys to keep playing other players over him. So I believe in Jabril Cox. I hope you do too. I'm not the biggest fan of the number 48, but hopefully he changes it after training camp is over. But finally, final question for you. So I need your final answer. This isn't Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but it is what it is. Who will be the Cowboys starters at linebacker in 2021? And we talked about, obviously, nickel coverage. You can talk about this. You can slice it however you want. For the purposes of this question, I think the answer in general, I think I approach this question in a more philosophical way. I think the Cowboys want to see Leighton Vander Esch play really, really well. I think the Cowboys would love to be put in a difficult situation next offseason where they don't know what to do and they are just torn about and have to let Leighton walk in free agency. I think Micah Parsons is going to be a starter from day one, because it's clear the Cowboys are very devoted to him, and it's clear that he's one of the best linebackers on the team. So that ultimately is what matters the most. I think that Jalen will get opportunities. I think that Jalen, again, we talk about veteran-ness, talk about, being there, talk about, capital that's been spent on him as a second-round draft pick and a second contract. I mean, there's a lot devoted to Jalen Smith that hasn't been devoted to Leighton Vander Esch, by the way. Like, when you consider the stock of the Cowboys, they've invested more in Jalen Smith than they have Leighton Vander Esch, which to me, suggests that there will be more deference given to Jalen than there will Leighton. I think Leighton will be the first between he and Jalen to kind of be disregarded, to kind of be lowered on the totem pole, to kind of be lowered in priority. But I think ultimately by season's end, we're looking at a Cowboys defense that's led by Micah Parsons and Jabril Cox. And obviously Keanu Neal factors in there. Keanu Neal is difficult to place though, because he is so versatile and he has so many options that you can, in terms of how you can utilize him. So Keanu Neal, I think, Keanu Neal and Micah Parsons, I think, get the ultimate deference, which is really exciting. If that's the case, I think we can trust this Cowboys defense to ultimately be headed in the right direction. They have a lot of talent, and this position has seen a really dramatic overhaul in just 1 year's time. And ultimately, again, I'm not trying to be sarcastic here, but it would be hard to be worse than last year. And that's a really positive thing, especially when you consider that the offense should be carrying itself on the other side of the ball, which is what we all expect from this Cowboys team in 2021. So yeah, man, I've been having a blast here. I hope you have too. We've really enjoyed breaking down every Dallas Cowboys position group in the lead up to training camp. I will be out there the final week of July. If you're going to be out there, hit me up on Twitter or Instagram. My DMs are open. I am at RJ Ochoa. You can shoot me an email. Always. My email is rj.ochoa@sbnation.com if that is more your speed. Make sure to check out bloggingtheboys.com, your home for the best Dallas Cowboys coverage on the entire internet, throughout the internet, in the internet. I don't know if it's on or in, but either way, make sure you subscribe to the Blogging the Boys podcast network. We put out a new episode every single day to make sure that you are always caught up with all things America's team. We are available on all major podcast platforms. If you can, leave a rating, write a review. Those things help us out so much. And speaking of, please subscribe here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. It is our job to give you the best Dallas Cowboys coverage that we can. We take that very seriously. We take a lot of pride in it. We're very excited that we passed 10,000 subscribers. We're very excited to see what's to come, what the season's going to bring. We have a lot of big plans that we are excited to share with you soon enough. So with all that being said, yeah, I think that just about does it. So do me a favor and have a great day. Just like have the best day ever. Have the best day of all time because you deserve it. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time.